Ladies and gentlemen, Rock Island Auction Company is coming to Texas. You may have heard a thing or two about that. We are coming to Bedford, Texas for our inaugural Premier Firearms Auction. That's December 8th through 10th. And it's just a wonderful facility. Got to see it for the first time last month. It is an absolute palace for collector firearms. It's long overdue. Firearms and collectible firearms have long been deserving of such a facility. We can't be more excited to show it to you and to make a good first impression as we come to Texas, making a good first impression on all our friends and neighbors. We are bringing no shortage of guns, just loaded with Texas history. Lawmen, revolutionaries, rodeo champions, leaders, sporting arms, down to the origins of the state, you name it. These guns are dripping with Texas history. Let's just get right in it. Almost no better place to start for firearms related to Texas history than the Colt Paterson. Of course, this is Colt's first venture out of Paterson, New Jersey, the largest of which is the number 5 holster model, known affectionately as the Texas Paterson, thanks to its use by the Texas Rangers and Jack Coffee Hayes. Now, the Texas Rangers didn't just use the number 5 Paterson. It was game-changing. They were able to go up against significantly larger forces of the Comanches at Battle of Bandera Pass, the Battle of Walker Creek, and they could do it thanks to the Colt Paterson. The tactics, Comanches weren't familiar with repeaters, so absolutely game-changing for them. And this is Paterson number 16. Like the Walkers, there's about 1,000 made. The Walkers had about 1,100. We'll get there. Texas Paterson's about 1,000 made. Number 16, an incredible amount of original finish on this Paterson. And it's a number 5. You have all the history. You have the case. You have the accessories inside the case. And it has been in some absolute giants of collecting. You have the Sutherland collection. You have Herb Glass collection. You have William Locke collection. And of course, it comes to us out of the Lamp collection. So some absolute giants for a 2-digit Colt Texas Paterson. Like we said, dripping with Texas history. Evolutionarily, of course, in timeline, chronologically, the Walker is next. Not just any Walker. Colt Walker C Company number 12. Now, we've sold one earlier one in my memory. That's C Company number 10. That was in one of our sporting collector auctions. And the condition of that one, well, this one is so good, the estimate's about 4 times what it was in the S&C. So that one might have been 2 serial numbers earlier, but this is a monster of collecting. We knew Walkers are. They're some of the top prices, kings of collecting. So, of course, the Patersons had good use. Paterson went bankrupt in Colt, the Paterson plant. You know the story. Colt needed a new weapon. The Rangers still needed weapons. Well, who better to suggest the improvements to the Paterson than a Texas Ranger who would use them? We'll enter Captain Sam Walker and the revolver that bears his name with the improvements. So guns used by Texas Rangers, improved by a Texas Ranger, for the Texas Rangers in the Mexican-American War. I don't know how much more rich with Texas history you can get than that. Of course, as we mentioned, this is C Company number 12. This is one of the first Colts. Like, the Walker's the first one to bear the Colt name. C Company were the first ones shipped out. And that's number 12. I find it difficult to imagine how this revolver would have avoided seeing use in combat by Texas Rangers in the 1840s. I just don't see how it's feasible. So, first-hand use, rich with Texas history, that Walker is an absolute winner. So let's move backwards, but not very far in Texas history. So we had the Patersons, which are mid to late 1830s. How about in 1835, 1836, when Texas declares its independence from Mexico? Well, of course, Mexico didn't like that very much, and Santa Anna pledged to reclaim Texas for Mexico. And he killed a lot of people doing it, especially at a little building you may have heard of called the Alamo. Well, there's also a man named Sam Houston, who's in charge of the Texian military at that time and organizing it, and he is in charge essentially of facing this force of Santa Anna and killing all of his fellow Texians, and he's retreating, and he's retreating, and he's retreating, and he's facing mounting pressure to counterattack Santa Anna. And as he's retreating, he's gathering more volunteers until finally there's a breaking point at the Battle of San Jacinto, where Texian forces sweep the Mexicans. It's a very one-sided battle. They capture Santa Anna, and it's essentially the birth of the Republic of Texas. Sam Houston obviously played no small role in Texian independence. He also went on to serve as the first president of Texas and the third president. And he was one of the first senators of Texas because, oh yeah, he also helped push for the annexation of Texas not too long earlier into its statehood in the United States. To say he played a small role is understatement of the year, not only as a secession from Mexico and its independence, but also becoming part of the United States. Texas is what it is today, in part because of Sam Houston, and this cane was a presentation from Sam Houston. We have this silver head, this knotted shaft, and the presentation on there reads, "Presented to James Burnside, Pittsburgh, an honest man. From Sam Houston, Texas, his friend." So who's James Burnside? Not a lot is historically known about James Burnside, but it is worth noting the phrase "an honest man" is particularly significant to Sam Houston because it appears on the last line of his tombstone. Maybe he served with Sam Houston in the fighting for Texian independence, but clearly a man of some importance to a man who was critical to forming Texas as we know it today. That's probably enough from the 1830s and 1840s. How about some cartridge guns related to Texas? Now, we're going to start with the Colt single-action army. It's all the grit of the Old West, and what better state representing the grit and the trials of the Old West than Texas? And here we have a Colt single-action army, but the connection isn't just a representation, because this Colt single-action army, engraved, carved pearl steerhead grips, belong to a Texas Ranger. Not just any Texas Ranger, of course not. This is the Colt single-action army of legendary Texas Ranger Frank Hamer. Now, you may not have heard of Frank Hamer, but if you've heard of Bonnie and Clyde, Frank Hamer led the posse that tracked and eventually, of course, ambushed and killed Bonnie and Clyde. That is now a movie on Netflix called The Highwaymen, where he's appropriately played by the very curmudgeonly Kevin Costner. This is a fantastic piece of Texas history. It comes with notes from Frank Jr., his son, which detail a number of exploits of Hamer. They even talk about how this was his carry gun very early in his career for a number of years. In fact, it talked about how they had the slip hammer installed. This has been modified by Hamer at the time and was basically his gun until he, quote, wore it out. That's how much use this saw from Frank Hamer himself. This was carried, this was used, and frankly, he had some pretty darn good taste. Again, with the carved pearl steerhead grips, factory engraved, and just a perfect piece for a national celebrity Texas Ranger like Frank Hamer. And now a couple cartridge guns on here that we've covered in previous videos, so I'm going to skim over them, and I'm just going to tell you to watch the video. How about the golden Colt single-action army of Pancho Villa? If you want to know more, you should watch the video. How about this stunning Colt single-action of Burl Mulkey, the Saddle Bronc Rodeo Championship during the Texas Centennial? If you want to know more, you should probably watch the video. Last but not least, we have a couple Colt semi-automatics. Talk about a genre changer of Jess Sweeten, Sheriff of Henderson County. And let me just tell you, if you're not familiar with Jess Sweeten, 150 fights, 3 wrecked cars, 11 shootouts. If that doesn't make you want to learn more about Jess Sweeten and his part in Texas history, Henderson County history, I don't know what to tell you. Now, in case you couldn't tell, from government models to Patersons, it's every stage of Texas history in the December premiere. There's a wide variety. As we mentioned, there's things shipped to Wolf and Clark, one of the famous retailers. There's things shipped to the border. as we see here with the Pancho Revolver, Rodeo champs, Outlaws, sheriffs, things that have just been shipped to Texas, any number of places that have had their own role, small or large, in the state. But there's also guns you don't always associate with Texas, and that's my final one. This one actually comes to us from London. And this is now what might a London shotgun that looks like this have to do with Texas? Patience, my friends. This is, of course, a James Purdey and Son, one of the world's finest gun makers, again out of London. And it's not only James Purdey, which makes it insanely desirable, as you maybe could tell from the wood and figuring. Absolutely stunning gun. This is in 410 bore. So again, all the popularity of a sub gauge you will find here. As you can tell, I can hold it with one hand. It's amazingly light and wonderfully constructed. This James Purdey comes engraved by Coggan, and it is Texas themed. And what a job he's done on these tiny little canvases here. You have desert quail, arising from a patch of prickly pear cacti. There more desert quail, come flushing from yucca plants on that side, and even the top lever has the Texas Lone Star in gold. So not normally a gun you think of with Texas history, but from the deep, intimate connections to just guns from people who've been there and love the state, our December Premier Auction is absolutely dripping with Texas history. We can't wait to make a great impression on all our new Texas friends. Again, at the December 8th through 10th Premier Firearms Auction. Preview day is December 7th, open to the public. We can't encourage you enough to come see this new fantastic facility for firearms collecting. Can't wait to see you there. Until next time, keep your powder dry.